Welcome to Clear to Respond on Rogers TV. I'm one of the co-hosts, Jeff Homeyard. It's nice to be back in the studio. This is Samantha Hoffman. Sam, we haven't been in the studio in a while. It's changing the backdrop. It's kind of comfortable.
I like it. I like it a lot. And we have a special guest today. Joining us today is Steve Smith from ESA.
Nice to see you guys.
So thank you for joining us, Steve. For our viewers, what is ESA?
Well, we're the Electrical Safety Authority, and we're the regulatory authority for the province of Ontario. So we, enforce codes and standards and try to make things safer on behalf of the government of Ontario. So we do fire investigations to find root cause, and if we could apply a code change to prevent the fire from happening again, that's really our role. So we also do enforcement of the safety code. So if you do renovations in your house, for example, our inspectors go in and do inspections, much like the building inspector. We also look for product safety, so we monitor the public so that products being sold are safe and approved. And we also do a lot of public awareness to make sure what we find we share with the public so that they can avoid any type of incidents.
So if I were in a construction site or industry, retail, anything big, you would come and you would be my consultant?
Well, we don't consult. That really isn't our primary focus, but we are the enforcement side. So we don't tell you how to build buildings, but what we try to do is work with you to make sure the building is built and is code compliant. So pretty much anything in the province that carries electricity we're responsible for, including we're the authority over the utilities as well.
I believe you have a video that we can watch and it explains all this in perhaps greater detail.
We do. So in this video, it's yours truly. I walk through a house and I talk about some of the things you can run into if you try to do renovations on your own. We're really trying to show you that it's not as much of a hobby as you think. Some of the stuff gets pretty complicated, and let's face it, your home is where you sleep and your family are. You don't want to take chances and have electrical problems.
And yet it's where people feel the safest.
We get told all the time you can do it, but this is a 5-year apprenticeship to become an electrician for a reason, and what appears to be easy isn't necessarily as easy as it appears.
I'm looking forward to it. Let's see the video, please.
Hi, I'm Steve Smith, the General Manager for the Electrical Safety Authority. And today I'd like to do a walkthrough of a typical house and discuss some of the electrical renovations you may be tempted to take on yourself. And let's talk about some of the challenges you might face. So come on in, let's take a look. Remember, the most important part of any electrical work is to ensure your own personal safety. In order to do that, you need to identify the circuit you're going to be working on, come down to the electrical panel, and identify the breaker that feeds that circuit. Turn off that breaker, and then verify the power has been turned off where you're working. And then you can work safely. When it comes to home renovations, by far one of the most popular areas to renovate is the kitchen. First of all, I'd like to point out that there is a requirement to take out an electrical inspection permit for almost everything you do around the home for your safety. When it comes to making those changes to the kitchen, the receptacles are probably the biggest one. It's very tempting to go from the old style to the new style, and what appears to be a very simple task can be very complicated. Did you know, for example, that depending upon the age of your house, you could have up to 5 different voltage and amperage combinations within that same wall space? Everything from a T-slot 20 amp receptacle to a ground fault circuit interrupter to a split receptacle having 220 volts between the top half and the bottom half. And if you install them wrong, they will blow up when you turn on the breaker. So I strongly recommend that you hire a licensed electrical contractor when it comes to the renovations and changes within this kitchen. The focal point of any family's home has to be the media center. But the media center can create some true challenges when it comes to electricity requirements. For example, if behind the location you want to put the media center is there are no outlets, you need to figure out how to get power over to there. Extension cords were meant for temporary installations only, and the problem with them is once they're installed, they're usually forgotten about and can be subject to harm. Frayed cords or damaged cords can be easily overloaded, creating hot spots and represent a true fire and shock hazard. The other challenge you're going to have is you usually have a lot of low power consuming devices in there, but they all need a plug. So one option would be to put in an approved power cube. The problem with the cube tap is they're subject to user abuse. You can cascade them by plugging more and more into them, which creates a hot spot, and again, it's a fire hazard. so not really the preferred way to go. The third option would be to put in an approved power bar. This is an entertainment center power bar, and it offers a number of features over the cube tab. First of all, it has overload protection to protect the amount of power being used through the device. Second of all, it has multiple outlets to meet all your needs. And finally, it has surge suppression, which will protect your sensitive electronic equipment. Don't take a shortcut. Don't use extension cords. Get a permanently installed outlet there to meet all of your needs. Other popular electrical renovation topics are light fixtures and ceiling fans. Let's take a look at a typical light fixture replacement. Although it's relatively easy to install and replace, there's a couple of key components you should be careful of. One is this insulation on top of the fixture. It's tempting to throw it away when you're replacing the fixture, but it really serves an important function. The heat generated by the light bulbs below will be transmitted up through the fixture, and if that insulation is not put back in place, the wiring will suffer and could cause a fire. The other key component is the bond wire. Make sure you connect the bond wire, because really its function is to ensure that if there's a failure within the equipment, that message goes back to the breaker or fuse and tells it to operate. It's an important part. When it comes to ceiling fans, it's a very popular idea to replace a light fixture with a ceiling fan. But most people don't realize that there's a specially approved box for ceiling fans. This box, different than the normal one, offers additional space to put in things like the remote control and the hanger that helps support the fan. They are beefier in construction and provide a little more mechanical strength. The last thing you want to have happen is that a ceiling fan will vibrate over years of use and come crashing down. And finally, I'd like to take a look at pot lights. Pot lights are a real crowd pleaser when it comes to making your house look better. But it's important to realize that there are two distinctly different types of pot lights. There is one that's approved specifically for installation on the top floor of a house and one that is for other areas. On the top floor of the house, it's important to realize that you have issues with thermal blanket insulation. This light fixture produces heat, and with that thermal blanket insulation over top of that fixture can build up heat and cause a fire. So it's important you use the proper fixture that has the design capabilities so that that heat does not become an issue. The normal fixture can be used anywhere else in the house. So now let's take a look at outdoors. And it's important to remember that electricity and water don't mix. But before you do any work on electrical systems outdoors, make sure you turn the power off at the breaker and verify the power is off for the tester. When using electricity outdoors, it's important to take advantage of devices that give you increased levels of electrical safety. To make sure that you take advantage of a ground fault circuit interrupter. These devices provide you increased protection against most forms of shock and are important to have in place when working with electricity outdoors. Also, when doing tasks outdoors such as cleaning eavesdrops or washing windows, keep in mind that there's a hazard of overhead power conductors. So make sure you respect the power, look up, and look out. Replacing or making modifications to your electrical panel is a job that requires a high degree of electrical expertise that should not be taken on by the average homeowner. Hiring a licensed electrical contractor will ensure the job's done right and ensure the safety of your home and your family. Today we've had a chance to take a look at some of the electrical maintenance and renovation issues you may face as a homeowner. And as you can see, some of them are quite complicated. We strongly recommend you hire a licensed electrical contractor to take care of those needs. You don't want to put your family or your home at risk. So remember, you want to stay safe. Thank you for joining us.
Very, very educational. Samantha, it's easy to see now where many of our building code and fire code enforcement guidelines come from.
And I really wish that our viewers would have had an opportunity to watch Jeff and I interact while we were watching that video, because even though between us we probably have almost 50 years of service,
Yes.
you see that, and both, like, he was elbowing me, like the pot lights.
I didn't know there were two different kinds, one for the upper level and one for the rest of the house. Am I subject to penalty or something if you were to discover I used the wrong one?
Our job really isn't to get in your way. Our job is to educate. So if we see something that's truly an electrical fire or shock issue, and that's really what we primarily deal with, then we're going to help make it safe. After all, you have to sleep there with your family, and we don't want a tragedy. So we really recommend 3 things. Hire a licensed electrical contractor. That's what the theme of that video is all about, because they are experts. They know the rules that you may not. They know the hazards that may be there that you're not aware of. Number 2 is ask for a certificate of inspection. Any quality contractor that's out there will give you a certificate of inspection, and that's your assurance that somebody independent like us made sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. So it's an important part to understand in there. And the last one is, if you're doing it yourself, and some people do, that's up to your quality, the ability of yourself, make sure you take out a permit, and we'll help you get through the exercise. But get us involved in early. We don't want to arrive there last and say, you've done this beautiful kitchen and it's all finished, but you haven't taken into consideration ground fault circuit interrupters and all the safety devices that really need to be there.
And we feel the same way. We don't want to be there after, we want to be there before as well. So we're going to leave it there. We're going to take a short break. And then when we come back, we're going to talk about some holiday safety. And something that I heard a lot in that video was the word approved. So I'd like to spend some time talking about approved. So make sure you come back after the break. We're with Steve from ESA, and we have lots of really shocking information to share with you.
Welcome back to Clear to Respond on Rogers TV. We're here with Steve Smith, General Manager for the Electrical Safety Authority.
And not just general manager. Are you an electrician by trade?
I am.
Okay, so not just an electrician?
I'm a master electrician, yes.
Okay, so you know what you're talking about.
I hope so.
You're an expert.
I've seen a lot in my 40-year career.
And you taught us a lot in that video in the first segment. And the one thing that I heard a lot was you mentioned the word approved.
Right.
Who does the approving?
So we're the overseer of all the approval agencies in the province of Ontario, and there's about 25 of them. Probably the most predominant would be CSA. So when you look for a piece of electrical equipment, sometimes the tendency is to go to the flea markets and you really don't know what you're buying. That approval mark is your assurance that someone's taken the time to test it to make sure that it's not a fire or shock issue. So it's very important you look for that. If not, all bets are off.
So show me the approval rate on the list on that.
So the approval mark here is on the front.
Okay.
So that's in this particular case, it's a CUL mark, which means it's ULC for Canada. So a little bit complicated. If you have any doubts, call us and we'll help you through it. But there are about, as I said, about 20 or so different approval agencies.
I don't know if we can actually get that picked up on the camera, if you can see that or not. But these are the kinds of labels that you're looking for.
You typically would see, and there are different purposes for them, a little bit complicated, but the approval mark is your assurance that someone's taken the time to do testing on the product to make sure that it's not a fire or shock issue.
There's a lot of them.
There's a lot of them. Free trade.
They're still, after being tested rigorously, they still tend to sometimes get recalled.
They do, and we're the only authority in Canada that can force a recall. So we do lots of recalls. We have a whole list of the recalls we've done. So if we get word back that a product hasn't met its performance standards, we recall it and we go back to the approval agency and say, why did this happen? And we hold them accountable.
So this is the time of year where a lot of people are adding things to their homes for the holidays, and we want them looking for these labels. But what other things should they be taking into consideration when they're decorating for the holidays, or even, I guess, shopping for the holidays?
So this is probably the busiest time of year for doing electrical changes around your house. You think about the amount of electrical load you're adding to your house when it comes to indoor lighting, outdoor lighting. And the best thing I could probably tell you is, besides looking at for a certification mark, is look for approved for the purpose. So that means when you buy an extension cords are not all created equally, as I show here. One's meant for indoor use, one's meant for outdoor use. And as you can see, this one's a lot more robust than that one. They all meet their purpose, but make sure that you're using them as they were intended. If you start using this outdoors, it has no provision for grounding on it, for example, it could become a shock hazard. And obviously the wire doesn't need to be as heavy duty because it's meant for indoors.
Now you brought another video clip for us, a really fun holiday safety clip.
Yeah, so we tried to put an animation together there to talk about some of the things that can go wrong to try to raise your level of awareness.
So let's throw to that video now and let our viewers see what they need to know when they're decorating for the holidays.
Bright lights and sparkling decorations make for a festive holiday season. Put safety first when you deck the halls this year. If you don't, your holidays could literally go up in smoke, or worse, seriously harm someone you love. Here are a few easy steps to keep you and your family safe from electrical hazards. Check for a recognized certification mark before you buy holiday decorations. That'll give you peace of mind they meet safety standards. Buying holiday decorations at a closeout store might save you a few bucks, but there's also a chance you'll be putting safety at risk with faulty or counterfeit products that don't meet safety standards. So buy from trusted retailers. And remember, decorations are specifically rated for either indoor or outdoor use. Think about where you're going to use them before you buy. Inside the house, don't plug too many decorations into one outlet. It could overheat and cause a fire. Only your tree should have branches, not your electrical outlets. And don't forget to unplug lights and decorations whenever you go out and before you turn in. It saves energy and could save you from an electrical fire. Nothing brightens a neighborhood like holiday lights, but you could be in for a big shock if your ladder gets too close to a power line. Look up and look out when you're stringing lights. Turn your post-holiday letdown into a decoration takedown. When the holiday season's done, pack up your holiday decorations until next year. The long, cold winter ahead can cause cords to crack and lead to a shock or fire. So bring good tidings to your family, friends, and neighbors this holiday season and share the gift of safety. Visit esasafe.com for more electrical safety tips for the holidays and every season.
Excellent video, also very, very educational. Steve, in our industry, we try to educate people that smoke alarms have a 10-year lifespan. Are there other electrical things that we need to be aware of, that their life expectancy may be compromised after a while?
Absolutely, everything has a shelf life, and when you're going about the task of putting up this year's Christmas lights, it's not a bad idea to first of all do a site survey. Take a look around where those overhead power conductors are, and when you're waving that ladder around, remember, if you come in contact with them, you could get into trouble. When you pull last year's Christmas lights out, take a look at them. They may have become frayed, may have broken lamps. You start installing that frayed equipment and you could liven up your entire eaves trough system, and a child could go by and touch the bottom and get a shock. So we got to make sure we do that. And maybe the time is now to upgrade from the old incandescents, which used a fair amount of power, to the LED system for a number of reasons. They run a lot cooler, they use less power, so you save money, and they usually are a lot more robust, so they can take a bit of abuse.
So what kind are these ones here?
So those are incandescents, and they draw a fair bit of power. I mean, there's nothing wrong with them, but you imagine when you start cascading them and adding and adding and adding, and then you start using the wrong type of equipment, the indoor stuff for outdoors, you can overload that wire and it will fail. So it's a time to think about the upgrade to LEDs, because they use a heck of a lot less power and will save you money to boot.
Saving money, we like that. It's time for another break. When we come back, we have more really valuable information about something new that we're starting to see, some new safety devices in the home. So join us when we come back. We're going to hear from Steve and what we need to know about arc fault protectors in your homes.
Welcome back. We're talking about electrical safety today with Steve Smith from the Electrical Safety Authority. We've discussed things, safety habits, safety products, approval agencies, and things like that. And for the most part, Steve, people know about ground fault circuit interrupters. This is a specialized outlet that is generally placed near sources of water. Is that right?
Correct, and so that gives you an increased level of shock protection. It's not complete shock protection, but an increased level.
Right. You see these close to the bathroom, around the kitchen countertops and so on.
Outdoor receptacles was another good example.
But there's a new push for another kind of circuit interrupter. Is that
Right,
correct?
that's correct.
Would you like to explain it to me? Because I don't really understand it.
So the new kid on the block is called an arc fault circuit interrupter, and it looks almost identical to the other one. You can see by the designation on there that's arc fault. And really what it does is one addresses shock and the other addresses fire. So we have about 500 electrically related fires in the province of Ontario every year, and we have about $30 million in damage and 3 fatalities. That's the numbers we see. So we're trying to do things to mitigate them. So the arc fault technology really looks at the circuit that it's protecting. It's got a computer inside that says, if there's arcing going on there, chances are you've got a broken wire or a frayed cord or the likes of that, and it will turn the circuit off. Now, it gets a heck of a lot more complicated than that. We're not going to go there, but let me tell you, there are intentional shocks. When you turn a light switch off, there's a little tiny spark that happens in there, so the computer has to say, that's a good one, and try to discriminate against the good ones from the bad ones.
Okay, I know that these are part of the component of the building code. It is a requirement. Are these also a requirement?
So as of April 1st this year, there is a requirement to put arc fault protection in any receptacle in the house with a few exceptions, and I won't get into all those details, it gets complicated, but yes, as of the new code of this year, it's a requirement to put in any residential application.
But I don't have to retrofit my home.
You don't have to retrofit. However, if you do a retrofit to your home, you would want to put them in because they're increased level. Now, we encourage people to change them even if they aren't required by code.
Back to the shelf life.
Back to the shelf life. Well, you know what? The analogy I use is you can buy a 1910 car and you could drive it down the 401 if you wanted to, but would you want to? So why not take advantage of increased levels of safety? These are great products that increase your level of safety from fire and shock.
And they'll be compatible with the wiring that's already in my home?
It depends. You have to be a little bit careful, and that's why I suggest you call a licensed electrical contractor. They know where these things will cause you problems because, again, they're looking for sparks, and things like dishwashers and hair blowers have little sparks in them, so you want to avoid certain areas that you don't want to use those.
So you mentioned, and I'm just going to go right back down to the basics. You mentioned that this arc fault is if there's a spark or if there's a damage to the wires. What would damage the wires in your home?
Well, it could be lots of things. Let's say you run a cord underneath a carpet, which we all know is wrong. This will actually detect it if there's that minute amount of sparking. Now, I will get a little bit technical on you here. It looks for the sine wave, which is beautifully and smooth all the time, but an arcing fault distorts that sine wave and makes it jagged. The normal breaker, there's not enough heat buildup to cause the breaker to trip. The arc fault will see that signature that it's called and say, that shouldn't be there, turn the circuit off. So it's pretty advanced technology.
So could it be something as simple as hanging a picture on the wall?
Absolutely. If you use a 10-foot spike and put it through the wall, all bets are off.
And what about, is there a risk for older houses versus newer houses?
Yeah, so everything has a shelf life, your car, us, our homes. So everything starts to deteriorate from when
Not
it's
us.
brand new. Not us, no. But everything starts to deteriorate over time. And so the older the home, the more likely it is you're going to have a problem. And everything requires maintenance. So you have an important factor there is to get somebody to do maintenance on your electric work, particularly if you start seeing problems.
And particularly because older homes typically have a lot fewer outlets.
Yeah, so you think about the products we have in our homes that our parents didn't. We got microwaves, we got big screen TVs. You know, all of those are power-consuming devices that the older homes were never designed to carry. So it may be a time to upgrade your electrical service too and take advantage of some of these airbags and seat belts.
So if I can just ask a question, because we see it all the time, we're reminding people all the time about hardwired smoke alarms. Smoke alarms that are wired right into your home, they need to be replaced. And they always say, but the light's still on, it still works. when it comes to hardwired smoke alarms, what's your opinion? Should homeowners do it themselves, or should they have an electrician come in and install them for them?
So although it just seems very easy to do, in a lot of cases, the older ones, it's 2 wires. It's quite easy to do. If you turn the power off, you go in and replace them. But I'll tell you, in the newer ones, it gets a heck of a lot more complicated because we have interconnected smoke alarms. And if you mess up the wiring there, you're going to have a problem. So I recommend, even though it's a simple thing, put your mind at ease, get a professional in there, a licensed electrical contractor in there, and make sure the job's done right.
Okay, we have to go. We have so much information. You shared so much. You've really got my hamster wheel spinning on all the things that I need to do and why I need to have a licensed electrician into my house with a permit.
Licensed electrical contractor.
Licensed electrical contractor. Thank you for joining us on Clear to Respond. We're going to put the ESA website up, and you can go there for lots more information. And if there's any questions, you can reach Jeff and I here at Rogers TV, #Clear to Respond. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.